second and third and punch shots.
A race is the simplest kind of sport, but horse racing is not a simple sport. And we're about to hear the replay.
I'll keep an eye out for the queen. Sometimes it's hard to find her. She can be on any one of these frames. It usually takes some detective work to find her, but the odds are real good. Now we might want to shut this down and see if I can get a queen in here. Sometimes it takes, it's real tough to find one.
No, I did run into these people. I went to a dance 2 months ago, walked around the corner, and there was one of the guys that worked at the office. Not one of the guys that was a suspect, but one of the guys that knew what went on and thought that I got busted. Did not know I was a detective, thought I got busted, and I talked to him, and it was nerve-wracking. It was one of the most nerve-wracking experiences I ever had.
It's a very complicated game. And one of the things that takes a while to see is just how many games are going on in a race at the racetrack.
When I go into a job, he gives me a certain amount of information. He doesn't tell me too much because he wants me to just watch. And if he tells me too much, then I just look for certain things.
They made linkages to bees being born of the tears of Christ on the cross, various points where when Jesus was sharing information about sharing and learning, bees were part of the metaphorical material that he would use.
The more I began to look at horse racing, the more the whole world opened up.
And I've always found the hive this extraordinary window into the natural world.
This is a kind of sad story. This was a really lovely man, a lovely older guy in Sonoma, a very wealthy guy, and he had a big ranch, and had a lot of money.
There's other people called trailers, and they may have identified a particular groom, the guy who takes care of a horse, and they watch those guys in the paddock, and then they trail behind them as they leave the paddock, and they follow them around as they go to the men's room, as they go buy a hot dog, as they go have a beer, and then they try to get in line right behind them at the betting window to see how they're betting.
What did he look like? He was short, fat, bald. He had very, very blue eyes, very pale blue eyes, very, very pink skin. And he wore a cowboy hat, just like a cowboy. He lived on the ranch all the time, and he loved horses, he loved animals. He was a lovely man, really.
Basically, they generate their own home out of their stomachs, out of their own body. And I've always marveled at the ability to transform honey into wax and in turn into their home.
A friend of mine, this woman I worked with in the press box, she was planning to go out after this race and buy a new car because they thought they had really a ringer in the race.
Nice ride, Joe. One more time for you, Joe. Okay, man.
I played twice, but
Not too bad.
coming up. Coming up.
You see fanning. There are fanners who are maintaining air currents within the hive and trying to stabilize the temperature.
They're not quite illegal, but they're not quite above board either.
If it gets even hotter, they'll bring water or very thin nectar and spread it around the surface of the comb and fan near it to help evaporate it and in turn cool the hive. And
the story was on this horse that last fall, he had gone continually downhill in the claiming ranks. Each race he was losing and losing badly, and the next race he dropped down from a $20,000 race to a 15, 15 to 10, 10 to 5. He just fell into the lowest level of the claiming rank and was losing horribly every time.
Took his wealth and put it into gold coins. I don't know whether they were, I think some of them were very old gold coins, but then some of them, I guess he got Krugerrands and stuff like that, old gold coins and silver coins, and he buried them. He buried treasure in different parts of his ranch. I think it was about eight or nine, maybe 10. I'm not sure exactly how many, probably about 10 treasure spots.
And then a few years ago, I had the opportunity to pick up a large library. And I made the mistake of putting it near where I keep my socks and underwear. And so every day as I'm trying to get dressed and get out of the house, I end up, something catches my eye and I'll grab it and pull it out.
Over the winter, the trainer takes him to a veterinary center. They find he has a very simple respiratory problem. He just needs something cleaned out. And now he's back to being what he was, maybe a $50,000 claiming horse, something like this. But nobody knows this but the trainer. And his workouts, they work him out for the clockers in dull time. They just send him out in these sort of half-hearted workouts. In the meantime, early in the morning before anyone gets to the track, they're working this horse out seriously in some serious speed drills.
And then he made a very extravagant map, very detailed map on parchment paper with brown ink, just the way it's supposed to look. Look kind of old, wrinkled it up, made a map, and stashed it in his desk someplace, just put it away, didn't think about it for years.
The Morning Line has the horse at 25 to 1, 21 I think. Morning Line has him at 20 to 1, and by rights, if you look at the past performances, the horse should go off at 35, 40 to 1, 50 to 1 would not have been impossible.
If they had, one of the things that's pretty amazing, if the queen should accidentally be crushed or die, and that the workers, when they realize that there's no queen pheromone around, one of the things that starts happening is that the workers can redevelop their ovaries, and even though the females do not carry sperm, they do have the capacity to lay eggs.
Very few people are in on this deal. The trainer has put the word out to just a couple of close friends, including my friend in the press box. She didn't share the secret with me. And anyone who was in on the deal was told only to bet at the last possible moment, so the odds don't change visibly.
The eggs that the workers lay can only develop into males or drones, and over time, the gender of the colony will switch from basically female to male, and in the process the colony is dying off.
If the horse's odds drop early, people are going to start following that good thing.
The colony is doomed.
And during this time he had met a very young woman, very beautiful woman, and married her, and was madly in love with her. She was about, I don't know, I guess about 8 inches taller than he was, and they made a very strange couple, but she was very pretty.
The hive is this remarkable sisterhood, all from a common mother.
Now the teaser is a horse personality. He is the male horse who they use to see if the mares are receptive to the advances of the stallion.
Okay, here's the queen.
They kind of go in and romance the mare before the mating session, and if the mare is receptive and wants this to happen, the teaser knows it, but just as the teaser is about to climb aboard, they pull the teaser off and drag him away, and then the stallion comes in and finishes up.
And the virgin queen, she'll leave the hive and take a mating flight, and following along behind her will be almost a comet shape of drones, which are the males within the colony. And basically their job is stud service, and they do very little else within the colony. And one drone after another will mount the queen, fertilize her, pass sperm, and in the process of mating, the males take a beating in this, because as the drone and the queen pull away from one another, she literally rips out his sexual organs. He falls to the earth dead, and she may mate with a dozen or more drones. And she may have literally years of necessary sperm to, in the future, fertilize the eggs that she lays. And after this goes on, she flies back to the colony, usually dragging the last sexual organs of the most recent drone she's made it with.
But what happened was, these people also laid off a lot of money with bookies.
What kind of business was it?
I can't tell.
You can't tell me what they did at all. Okay.
On her hind legs, whoops.
And bookies figured it out. I guess through their network, they saw a lot of money going down on this 35-to-1 shot for no particular reason.
And that each one is from the blossom of a different type of plant or tree, and they go by so fast that it's hard to pick them up.
He had an imagination, because he had this treasure, so obviously he had imagination.
The backpack hive, which was a portable beehive built into a wicker enclosure, and it's designed to hold a small colony that I can carry on my back. And what I'd like to do is carry this colony from the San Francisco Bay Area to New York City.
Bookies had a very simple way of dealing with that problem.
Bees have traditionally never been in a mobile hive.
They went to the track and bet on that horse.
If it's even moved a few feet, the bees tend to come back to the old location, are completely disoriented.
And very few people are betting in the early stages. So the first flash of the board goes up, and there is maybe at most $700 or $800 bet so far on the race. $500 of it are bet to win on that horse.
And so a typical hour might be maybe 10, 11 feet an hour in my initial trial walks.
He was taking a walk on his land one day, and he stepped on this area it gave away. He was just walking along, he like twisted his ankle, and it was, you know, he said, wait a minute, I think there was a treasure here. He'd sort of forgotten about it. You know, he didn't think about it. He buried it a long time ago, didn't think about it.
The more you dig, the more you unravel one layer after another, something takes its place. And it's sort of like the magic well that the more you draw from it, the more water that comes in.
So he ran back to the house and checked his treasure map and went out and checked all the places, and all the treasures were gone except two, because he had made the map wrong and had mixed up two of the places on the map.
This big $500 bet is hanging up there, visible on the tote board, and money starts following it. There's something going on. Somebody knows something.
And he called detectives in. So this is when we came in on the case. So
the bookies forced the odds down, and they covered their ass beautifully. And my friend won a little money, but no car.
As you get into the fall, where the drones aren't really necessary anymore, oftentimes there's what's called the massacre of the drones, or forcing the drones out the front of the colony. And what happens is that since the drones are not necessary for survival in the course of the winter, the workers gang up on them and literally push them out to the front of the front porch down here, and let them die from lack of food and also from lack of warmth.
Okay. Good start.
Another important pheromone is alarm pheromone that, again, if a hive is threatened or if a bee is being hurt, or when she stings a person or an animal, as the stinger goes into the body and she pulls away, the stinger itself has an alarm pheromone that's being emitted from the stinger.
They took fingerprints and they checked the map out, and there was only 2 sets of fingerprints on the map, his and his wife's.
They're almost, again, like this magnet or beacon. Other bees are pulled in and will sting at the same site.
And an interesting niche is the tout, who, they have no job. They're like barnacles. They find places in the racetrack to kind of affix themselves to, and they occupy this little ecological niche.
And so if you're getting stings on your face or hands, you'll likely get more of them there because the pheromone guides the hostile bees in for defending the colony. And then
they just make their money kind of brokering inside information which may or may not have any validity.
The queen bee, which was originally named the king bee because it was seen, they couldn't imagine the queen or being at the head of a colony.
A race is finished, it looks like a horse has won, then a sign goes up, inquiry. The judges, the stewards are looking at the race. They think there might have been a foul. It's a long wait. And then they reverse this, the stewards decide to reverse the orders of the horses. And, okay, the horse that was second is now the winner. People go nuts. Well, in the meantime, a lot of people have thrown away their winning ticket and have headed for the exit.
So he thought it was his wife, but he wasn't sure. He didn't want to really think it was his wife. And she was also going to Paris. So we found that after we checked into it for a while. And we figured she was going to take the gold with her, so.
Times of war, when a fortress was under siege, the hives would sometimes be gathered up and they were catapulted into an invading army's approach and to try to stop that. And usually when a hive explodes, the bees are going crazy and they end up stinging everything in sight.
That's where the stupor comes into play. There are these guys who go around bent over, and that's why they're called stupors, and they kick around the floor searching for lost winning tickets. And it's a tough way to make a living. But I've done it myself.
Some of the armies that were under attack by the Romans, they would, in effect, add a poison or a sleep potion to honey in the hives in the areas that the Romans were approaching through, and the army became so intoxicated from this tainted honey that the local villagers or whatever had evaded attack from just from tainting the honey.
First, he was angry. Then he's kind of pissed at first, and he says, well, he wants to get her. He was kind of crushed by the whole thing, and he didn't want to do it. He kept saying, look, we'll get it back for you, no problem. It'll be real easy to do it.
Before you could order bees in the mail, or buy them from another beekeeper, people were always trying to find bees in the wild. And one of the devices that has been used in various forms from the Egyptians and Romans on is a bee hunting box.
We'll get the same luggage. We know the guys at United, and they'll let us in the baggage, and we'll just switch the bags. So this is also a very tempting point too, because you're thinking you're on there and you've got all this thing, and this is the part where on TV the guys are probably the vice guys are probably steal the money.
The bee hunter would get on the edge of the forest in a clearing and see some bees foraging on some clover or other flowers and carefully scoop up a few of them and in the same motion close this down.
You're constantly dealing with this dishonesty all the time and everybody bending everything and controlling it. I guess it's a way of controlling stuff, trying to make it be yours. And in some ways the people projected onto a colony attributes of the society that was doing the looking. And in that way, a lot of misinformation got started and was perpetuated.
There's no margin in it for them to give you any good information on their horse. They want to cash bets too, so they want their horse to go off at 10-1, not to tell people they've got a great horse so it goes off to 3-1. So
you have to be real shifty, and, you know, move from one thing to another very quickly. So you start seeing it in other people. It makes you see it in other people later on.
And at that point, they would open the first compartment again and bring a little scrap of honeycomb. And they'd place that in there, close this down, and this time again using sunlight, open this slide, which allowed light to enter the first compartment, open the inner sliding partition, watch for a bee to come in, and once she had entered, they close it down.
Generally, you're lying all the time because they never know who you are, and you always have to say you're somebody else, and you're doing something else, and you tell stories about yourself, and you keep making these mistakes constantly and saying the wrong thing, and you have to recover very quickly.
And some of the biggest bets happen when there's an outstanding favorite in the race.
And allow the bee to engorge on honey. And
you get relaxed and you start to say something about yourself that would indicate that you weren't what you said you were.
And they'll dump really $30,000, $40,000 on a horse to show, just in order to get that quick 10-cent return on every $2.
And they'd set it down on a stump or someplace in a clearing, and
they're called bridge jumpers. Good start.
He would say you would have a job at a certain place and you weren't supposed to be there, but you couldn't name the place. And they'd say, well, where do you go? And you have to make up names of places that don't exist. So you're making up names and you're living in get this fantasy world that exists.
And wait for the bee to come out of the box, and she would usually come out laden with this fresh honey, take spiraling flights out, and circle around getting a sense of where the box was in relationship to the clearing. And at some point she would dart into the forest, and at this point the beekeeper was very finely tuned to that movement of the bees, and he was eyeing and lining the bee into the forest. And
she was leaving, and we had to get to the airport exactly the right time.
Then he would incrementally move this along that line, getting closer to the actual hive.
Sometimes they lose. It happens.
And what makes all this work is that when the bee returns to the colony, she shares the honey with the house bees and offloads the honey, and in turn lets them know that she's found a new food source through a series of dances. And in turn, they fly back to what now is what they think is a flower, but actually is this wooden box. And they begin forming this almost chain to bring this extraordinary bit of free food back to the hive.
And she knew who my boss was. So he was in disguise. I was dressed very straight. I had a wig on, dressed like a straight person.
The track offers many ways to lose money and a few ways to win them. The basic betting is win, place, show. You can bet any dollar amount, dollar on up. Horse to win has to finish across first. And the horse pays the odds that are set on the tote board that's out here in the paddock and also in the infield. Place bet, your horse can come in first or second. You're going to make less money on that bet. If a win horse pays $15, that same horse will probably pay about $7 to place, or about $3 to show. And a show bet is you're betting that your horse will come in first, second, or third.
I had to look straight so nobody would suspect who I was. And you're not noticed. People notice you when you're dressed like, I don't know, even in jeans or something, they just notice you, so you have to look different. And you act different when you look different.
A swarm is when a hive is most vulnerable because it's lost its protective home. It's basically gambling that what they carry in their bellies is going to see them through to the setting up a new home. And so
the art or science of picking a winner is contained in this, is the daily racing form, which has incredible data, very systematized and not immediately accessible to the first-time track goer.
one of the things that has interested me has to do with the literature surrounding honeybees, and outside of humans, more has been written on bees than just about any other life form.
They try to, there's a mythical they at the racetrack, and there's a lot of people who are trying to figure out what what they're doing, what the smart money is doing. All of a sudden the odds start dropping on a horse that should be 10-1, and the question everybody's asking is, what do they know? There must be something.
One of the things the bees use to help identify the location of their hive are various scents.
And got to the airport. She was checking in. I had to see where she was. I had to stand in line and watch her.
And now we have a showdown where the two rival virgin queens, one has to, in effect, dominate the hive. And what usually happens is that there are a series of challenging cries. It's called piping of the queen. When the sound, this piping sound moves within the colony, it quiets. And the whole colony momentarily becomes still. The rival queens will fight for the right to become the mother of the colony, and they will fight one another until one stings the other and kills that queen. And then the queen that wins the fight can go to these adjoining cells and literally rip a hole in them and sting the unborn queen.
We got, with no trouble, got into the belly of the plane. It was very hot in there. It was a lot of...
Maintained.
Came back to the guy, gave him the money, and he said, I can't do it. You know, put them back the way they were. I don't want her to know it.
The bees as a species were ever seriously undermined, we'd see the availability of food products for humans seriously undermined as well.
He said, I know that she'll bring it back to me. I trust her. And we were going, no, no, don't do that. You're crazy. And we're trying to talk him into this, like 3 minutes left. And
Blocked, weakened, driving.
so we go back, we switch the bags. She goes off to Paris.
And there's a relationship between honey, sweetness, and love.
Dwelt. The doors fly open and the horse just stands there.
And so I've always felt a certain role of caretaker in relationship to the hive, that I'm caring for a small portion and link within this food chain that is essential.
And there was a great racehorse that was the result of letting a teaser out in the field with an old mare. And
The bees will grow and get better at this moving home site. And my gut feeling is that they'll find some way to make this work.
When he knew it was real. He knew it was real, and he just wanted to give her that one chance more because he really loved her. We felt really bad.